Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Happy June. So yesterday, CNN held town hall specials with a trio of presidential candidates: Seth Moulton, Eric Swalwell, Tim Ryan. We watched it so you wouldn't have to. All three of them are Democratic members of Congress. None is in danger of becoming president anytime soon. So why do we pay attention to what they say? Well, because as they stammer and sweat and pander profusely, they give us a pretty good idea what Democratic primary voters believe and what they care about. And, of course, the thing they care about most, the thing they can't stop talking about ever, is race. They're obsessed in a deeply unhealthy way. Racial obsessions are always deeply unhealthy. Watch Seth Moulton explain that Georgia didn't elect Stacey Abrams governor not because she wouldn't be a good governor, but because you, sir, are a bigot.
We have a problem with racism in America today. If this country wasn't racist, Stacey Abrams would be governor. People of color are being systemically denied the most basic right in a democracy, which is the right to vote.
So Seth Moulton went to Andover and Harvard, unlike you, so he must be unbelievably impressive, probably a verified genius and a good person, too. And yet somehow Moulton didn't bother to muster a single piece of evidence to show that any of his claims were true. Because actually they're not true, because it's not 1953 anymore. They can't let you know that, though. For Seth Moulton's purposes of control, it's got to be Jim Crow Alabama at all times, now and forever. Burning crosses and the sound of night riders in the distance. That will keep you terrified and easier to manipulate. That's the whole point. Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to bring the South to heel, but the modern Democratic Party doesn't need the military. Instead, they've got big business to make the population obey. Watch Eric Swalwell of California bow before the gods of woke capital.
You have Netflix, Disney, NBC Universal, Warner Media, which owns CNN. They've all warned they may halt business here if that law goes into effect. I wonder, do you support that kind of economic boycott?
Yeah, if that law goes into effect, I absolutely do, and CNN may have to move. There's a lot of young women who work at CNN who'll be affected.
Do I support putting big companies in charge of America's social policy, Eric Swalwell was asked. Of course I support that. Screw voters, they're irrelevant. Our billionaire donors will bring back the abortion fairy. You'll notice applause from the audience. They love that. Democratic primary voters love it when you talk like that some billionaire is going to ride to the rescue and make everything okay. You know what they don't like? They don't like reality. That infuriates them. Biology is real. Russia did not beat Hillary. Global warming isn't actually killing millions of people right now. All true statements, all of those statements drive them bonkers because they're true. Watch their response when Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper, who's also running for president, reminds them that actually socialism doesn't really work.
If we want to beat Donald Trump and achieve big progressive goals, socialism is not the answer. I was reelected. If we're not careful, we're going to end up helping to reelect the worst president in American history.
So that's the point where Hickenlooper should have paused and called out the audience like a stand-up comic and asked them to name a single place outside of Sweden in the 1970s in which socialism has actually worked. Anyone? Anyone? But, of course, he didn't do that. He was too afraid. Moist palm Democrat. God knows what the mob would have done if he tried. Watch what happened to John Delaney, maybe the bravest of anyone in the race, when he suggested that Medicare for all might not be such a great idea.
Medicare for all may sound good, but it's actually not good policy, nor is it good politics. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. 100.
Oh, he's dying out there. Boo! Stop him before he hurts our dreams. If we want it to be true, it must be true, screamed the 4-year-olds in attendance. I am the center of my universe. Cater to me. Tell me I'm wonderful. If you strip it all away, that really is the message of Democratic voters. 200-proof narcissism. Give us more. The narcissist in chief was very offended. For the crime of making an obvious point, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went on Twitter and demanded that Delaney get out of the race. And that doesn't, in the end, bode well for Democrats. When a party demands delusion, that means only the delusional can win.
There is a debate among presidential candidates who have spoken to you here in this room and those who have chosen, for whatever reason, not to be in this room.
That's Bernie Sanders, just one of several Democratic presidential candidates at the California State Party convention over the weekend, who took aim either directly or indirectly at Joe Biden, the frontrunner. Joining me now, Mo Alithi, former DNC communications director, and Mark Thiessen, former speechwriter to President George W. Bush, and both are Fox News contributors, and it's great to have you here. Take a listen to two other Democrats at the same convention talking about the frontrunner.
Say if we all just calm down, the Republicans will come to their senses. But our country is in a time of crisis. The time for small ideas is over.
So the riskiest thing we could do is try too hard to play it safe.
And Politico writing that the former Veep is running against himself. The rest of the field is trying to get within striking distance. It's like an Alaskan dog sled, said Bob Mulholland. He's a DNC member from California. If you're not the lead dog, the view is the same all day long. Biden, as a leader, doesn't need to be at every weekend barbecue. Mo, is that the case?
Well, I think it's true that Joe Biden is a pretty strong frontrunner right now, and I think it's maybe surprising to some people just how solid his support has been in this early phase. But it is still just an early phase. And the others, I guess, are starting to feel some need to mix it up a little bit and try to chip away at his lead. Bernie Sanders has seen a steady decrease in his support since the day he got in. Elizabeth Warren's been upticking a little bit. Some of the others are kind of holding steady. So they see now an opportunity to try to come at him and lay the foundation for the line of attack. 3 weeks from now is the first Democratic debate. And that's when they hope, I think, to begin to really differentiate themselves from one another and from him. I think you're starting to see them lay some of that groundwork.
Mark, I'm sure that they are frustrated that Joe Biden took a long time to get into the race. They've been working at it for many months, and he's about 19 points ahead of them, and that's been relatively steady since he got in the race in early April.
Yeah, that's very true. He's about 19, 18 points in the Real Clear Politics average in national polls. But despite the best efforts of the Democrats to change our system, we don't have a national election, a popular election. And if you look at some of the states, Iowa, he's only up by 4. Nevada, he's up by 3. California, he's up by 8. Texas, he's up by 1. And Massachusetts, he's down by 3. Really, the only major state, primary state, where he's doing well is New Hampshire, where he's up by 13. So he hasn't locked it. I agree with Mo. He hasn't locked this thing up yet, and it's actually they're closer to him than it may seem from the national polls. But why is Biden, I think, vulnerable? I think the main reason Biden is vulnerable is because he's ahead in the polls because there's a segment of the Democratic electorate that has convinced itself that Biden's the guy who can beat Donald Trump. And so they're willing to moderate a little bit if they can beat Donald Trump. And he's the guy who can win back the forgotten Americans who voted twice for Obama and Biden but switched to Donald Trump in 2016. I think he's actually the worst person to win those people back for 2 specific reasons. First, because they're doing better under Donald Trump than they were under Obama-Biden. They lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs under Obama-Biden. They've gained 500,000 under Trump. And second of all, one of the reasons why they voted against him, for Trump, is because they were sick of the political establishments in both parties, in the Democratic and Republican parties, who weren't listening to them. And Biden is a charter member of the establishment. He's been in Washington for 46 years. So I think there's this myth that Biden can win back the forgotten Americans who voted for Trump, and I think he's probably the least capable of all the Democratic candidates to do it.
And you heard Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, at least, and I'm sure others, but those two stick in my mind, Mo, basically saying that we can't go backwards, which I'm assuming that they're saying they don't want to go back to the Obama-Biden era. And Bernie even writing an op-ed today talking about how his upbringing gives him a better chance to win back those voters. How do you think that's going to go over?
Look, it's a delicate line they have to walk because Democrats generally, I think, still feel nostalgic and good about the Obama years, the Obama-Biden years, and so how do they say we need to move forward without necessarily attacking the immediate Democratic past is going to be a little bit of a tricky tightrope for them to walk. But they're going to try to walk it. And look, you know, to Mark's point, I don't know if Joe Biden is the guy who can best win back those voters that he was talking about. He may well be, but others are going to make the case as well. But I do think Republicans should be thinking about the fact that it's not as slam dunk with those voters this time around as it was this last time. And if you want some indication of that, look at 2018, where in those states, Michigan and Pennsylvania, or Pennsylvania, Democrats started to win it back in those midterm elections. People there are not as 100% solid on the president as they once were.
And Mark, I don't have time to show it, but you even had one Democratic candidate, John Hickenlooper, the former governor of Colorado, booed because he said socialism is not the answer. Last word to you.
Which would have been a completely non-controversial statement in either Republican or Democratic circles until very recently. But look, I mean, that's a brilliant move by Hickenlooper, because we're talking about John Hickenlooper. Would we ever be talking about John Hickenlooper if he hadn't said that? And he's betting, he's being an unconventional political entrepreneur. He's betting that there's an extant demand for socialism in the Democratic Party, but he's betting there's a latent demand for moderation, and he can find that lane.
Well, and also,
I don't know if it exists.
Governors are different, right? They had to.
Sure.
They were executives of a state. It's a little bit different for them. Mo Alithi and Mark Thiessen, thanks for kicking off the week with us.